Again. Thank you very much for joining the call. If you're just joining the session, this is the Product Lab session. You can also call it a series by people in product community. If you do not know about people in product community, it's just a gathering of a community of product managers where we learn, connect, and grow together. Sometimes it's formal, sometimes it's very informal. But at the end of the day, we're connecting and our careers are improving. Today, the session is going to be about how we can solve real product management problems with design. You probably have a lot of questions. Don't worry. Elias is here. Elias is going to do a great job answering whatever question you have. And it's going to be a very, very interactive session. So if you have any question, just keep that in mind and you can, I mean, it's up to Elias to let us know if you can raise up your hand while he's speaking. But let me introduce Elias. Elias is a product design leader. And one thing that I was discussing with him before we all came on board is I was talking about how he's been able to climb the ranks from junior to mid to senior, and was able to get past the ceiling of senior product designer. What I've seen a lot is most product designers just get stuck at that senior product designer and they stay there until they change careers or just stay there until they retire. But Elias is faster, and he is the head of product design at Kora, and he has over 8 years of experience crafting user-centered solutions in payments. I mean, across payment systems, both that are both used by businesses in Africa and businesses around the world. So he's bringing to this session experience not just in finance, experience not just working with businesses in Nigeria, but global experience, right? So whatever question you have, bring them like a bazooka and be ready to throw them at Elias. He's going to answer them well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Elias community. And hi, Elias, over to you. You can please go ahead.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's always good to be in the midst of amazing people like you. And thanks to the people in product team for setting this up and giving me the opportunity to share. Wow. Hope everyone is doing great. Just thumbs up if you're doing great, if you're all right, if your day's been good.
I didn't know if
Okay.
we're able to be able to thumbs up.
It's all right. It's all right. I think that the fact that we're here already says a lot about how we are day turned out. So I'm really grateful for everybody coming and showing up on this. Okay, so let me just get started very quickly. So we have a very interesting conversation today, and this particular conversation is, I mean, one of these meetings or one of these sessions cannot do justice to it. So I'll try as much as possible to be really deep and really clear too. All right. Like was mentioned earlier on, please, if you have questions, you can drop them in chat. We'll definitely address them. It's a very interactive session. In between, you could ask any questions. You could raise your hand, or I think preferably maybe just drop the question, and then when we have the question and answer session, we can raise hands or fix all the questions. All right. Okay. If I'm good to go, thumbs up again, just for engagement. All right. All right. So let me just quickly share my screen so that everyone can see what this is about. All right. Interesting. So today we're going to be talking about solving real product management problems with product design. This I believe this is a two part kind of conversation. There is a product design part, and I feel like there might be the engineering part. But I particularly am interested in this because of my role and my experience and different things I've seen in the different teams that I've worked in, and what has worked, what has failed. And no better set of people to have this conversation with than people who are very much involved in the product management space or leading teams, leading product teams, or even designers here. And I think that there's a whole lot that we can unpack from this conversation. And I think the priority of everything that we're going to discuss today is how to improve that relationship between the product managers and designers, all right? Eventually, how that affects a better or creates a better product culture, and how we get to build better. Okay, so let me explain a couple of reasons why this conversation is very important. And if you're a product manager here, I think you will find some of the things that we shared tonight, today, really interesting and probably practicable in your teams, however way you want to deploy them. But the first thing I would like to start with, and that's a really important aspect to the conversation, is that as the product manager, you have a very peculiar and central role in championing an effective product culture. If you look at the triad, especially the designs and the designers and the engineer and the product management circles, you would find out that you have more product managers eventually becoming heads of products or leading product teams. And that's because of your unique positioning within the conversation. So a lot of things that we discuss here, all right, is basically going to share, basically going to share like how you, as a product manager with product in the product management practice, can build a better product culture by, some of the things that you can get your designers and your teams to do. All right. So I think that's basically what we're going to be talking about. But before we get started, let me ask a very simple question. Maybe two people could just help me here. All right. And there are no wrong answers. Nothing is incorrect here. Everybody has their perspective and point of view on the matter. But just for the sake of, let's hear real responses. All right. So basically, this question: what are the biggest challenges you experience in your workflow as a PM? If you want to take it on, please do raise your hand. I'd really love for at least one or two people to just share from their own personal experience or their own workflow.
I will always be available as the icebreaker, but it looks like H things is about to go ahead.
Yes, please. Let's go with H things first.
All right. So my name is Ihoma. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Ihoma. Yes, I can
Yes.
hear you clearly.
So I think for me, obviously, not without there being a right or wrong answer, for me is most times as a PM, I'm very excited about the strategic vision of whatever product I'm running. But sometimes I get frustrated when people are not as excited, right? And the challenge there is if someone does not understand the vision, it sort of shows in every other thing that they do, right? So that for me, that's one of the biggest challenges, that sometimes you have to literally keep evangelizing, spoon feeding, and that is the major challenge. But obviously, as PMs, you have to continue evangelizing. But for me, people not being as excited as I am when it comes to the strategic vision of the product. That's my challenge. But yeah, thanks.
That's a very interesting and common one. Even as a designer, I've also seen such play out in my design team, where there are certain strategic design operations that we want to accomplish. And it's as if I'm the only one carrying that excitement on my head. I can imagine how it must feel for a product manager who is like very or mostly responsible for the success of the product. All right.
Exactly.
So it's a very valid one. Thank you, Ihema. Thank you. Any other thoughts from anyone?
I can go ahead. Mine is simple. Your team members not using your product. That would be my biggest challenge. Because then it would go back to what Yoma said, right? Regardless of what it is that I say in terms of evangelizing, if you're not using the product, you just won't get it, right?
Exactly.
So that's
fine. That's a very, very good one. I think that's like it's like giving somebody stuff you made and you've never tasted it. Like maybe a chef now, trying to cook for you say you're a Michelin star chef, but you've never tasted your food. Like, I mean, it's weird. All right, but yes, that's a very valid one. Can we take one more? Anybody else? Anyone wants to share again? Okay, I think we'll first move forward. So for this conversation, kind of classify the problems that, even similar to what Hema has shared, the zest and the vision, all right, like really carrying that vision. I would like to classify the problems that PMs mostly face into 4 buckets, all right, or 4 categories. And we're going to be discussing them a little bit and looking at where does design come in on this part, all right? How does design play a role in most of these problem buckets? All right. I had a couple of conversations with other PMs and that I know, and friends that I know that are in the product management space, just listening to the kind of problems that they have, running their teams as well as like running the product, or at least managing the product. All right. And we're able to condense everything into just 4 main categories. All right. I mean, there could be more, but from my point of view, this is how I could summarize them. And the first one, which I would classify like the most important one, is a clarity problem. All right. Being able to express what exactly we're trying to do. All right. I feel like the entire product journey, the entire journey of like building, all right, has to do with clarity. Like, what exactly is it? Up until it gets to the user's hand, all right, a lot of things are very unclear. All right. Even understanding the vision of the product or what we're actually trying to get done, all right, there's a lot of clarity, either less clarity or more clarity involved there. The second problem is timeline. All right. There's always this thing about us delivering as ASAP. We needed to bring this out yesterday. We needed to do this yesterday. All of these things need to come out. No matter what, there's always no time to get stuff done. Everything needs to have been done yesterday. All right. So I feel like PMs face this particular problem. How exactly can we, ship things fast? All right, and without breaking anything, basically. And then there's the alignment problem. And this is what happens when there is more than one function in the conversation. All right, everybody has their expertise, everybody has what they're trying to get done, everybody has their contribution to this particular goal. All right, but how can we get everybody together? Like, why is it that everybody seems to claim to be in the same group or going for the same goal? All right, but most people don't seem to understand that we actually do need to be united on this particular goal for it to be accomplished. And then the last one will be the risk problem, all right, which kind of also has stones in all of this. The entire product development process is a very risky process. It's about risk and risk management. And asking the questions that we're trying to answer, we really do not know until the end, until we have, delivered something before we can be able to answer those questions. So most of these problems, if you really look at all the problems that you face as a product manager, it can either fall in one or more of these buckets. And it's okay for us to like look in depth into each of these problems and figure out where does design come in all of this. All right. One thing to also note, and like I have said earlier on too, is that all these problems I've mentioned is all about us uncertainty. We don't really know. At the end of the day, product management and the entire product development, we really don't know, but we want to do something about it. All right. And everything is just uncertainty in disguise. But the great thing is that we've been equipped as product managers and designers to handle uncertainty. All right. Our roles, our jobs, and everything that we do is about like painting more or putting more certainty into the mix. All right. And like literally answering those questions about what should happen, what can happen, and what we need to get done. All right. So this is just out of the way. Let's look deeper into the clarity problem with the short time that we have. All right. And I'll try not to mention a lot of things that you already are aware of. I mean, we have more product people here, so I don't really need to go into like the in-depth of your workflows. All right, but we can look into like holistically into some of the things that are challenging for the designer, for the product teams. All right. And the honest, like I've said earlier on, we really don't know. Right? is the entire product development process is about answering questions around uncertainty. All right. And everything that we're trying to do is about putting more clarity into the work that we're getting done. And design thinking, basically, and this is where designers come in. One of the things that we need to do is one thing that designers are equipped to do is to put more light certain problems. Right? And I think that's very important for that relationship design and development. It's very important for that relationship between the design and the. Can everyone hear me clearly?
It's
Yeah,
breaking a
it's
bit.
breaking at
Because
some
me,
point, but yeah, it's breaking a bit.
So I just got a notification here. How about now? Is it better?
Yeah, it's better now. Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So basically, we're literally trying to. Design thinking is basically about getting closer to the user, getting more answers. All right. The entire design thinking process, empathizing, ideating, and then all of those things that designers do is about throwing more clarity, experiential clarity. At the beginning of a project, there are a lot of opinions, there are a lot of things that everybody is sharing. How about we do this? Or this is what we want to get done from the business point of view. All right, this is what we think is going to work, and all of that. But designers, our job is to provide more experiential clarity to what all this mix of questions. All right. To just dive a little bit deeper into what designers do. All right, designers help like expose real pain through research. All right, I think that's one of the most important things that a designer can actually join a product manager to do is to be very involved in that, answering those questions around the problem, the research problem. All right, not it's quite an undeveloped part of the design product management relationship research that a lot of times we just go ahead with what we think is a problem without really finding out in depth what we need to solve. All right. Obviously, you understand that prototypes help to turn abstract ideas into testable artifacts. So we thought of something, we were thinking of a particular way to solve this problem. Obviously, your prototype is going to help create like a tangible version of your solution so that you can test it. All right. I've seen design reviews, for example, to bring out, we've thought about the particular product, we've thought about how everything is going to, like, we're going to solve this problem. We've done the flows, we've done everything. All right. And then during design review, a lot of questions that shake the table come up. All right. And a lot of edge cases are reviewed early enough so that we can treat that and fix that and eventually build. All right. So I'll dive a little deeper into more of what the designer, how we can build more on that relationship. But a lot of times the designer has a significant role to play in ensuring that this clarity problem is reduced to the barest minimum. All right. Before I continue, I just have a question I'd like to throw to the audience. And I think this is a very important one because I've seen this in different places. They have different ways they tackle this particular problem. So the question is simple. When do you usually bring your designer into the conversation? Does anyone want to try?
at the beginning, at the
What does
when
the
the
beginning mean?
at the beginning, when you're trying to even understand your user, right? I
Okay.
believe that designers should definitely be part of the conversation to frame that user space as, or rather, the framing the problem often starts from
Yes.
knowing your user. So yeah.
Yes. Actually, that's very, very brilliant. And I feel that helps with this thing about clarity. Well, let me hear other people. Chikodi, since your mic is unmuted.
Yeah, for me, I think it's after the requirement gathering session where you might have consulted with the stakeholders, getting to know what it is. Then from after which, by the time you now put the ideas together, and then you now reach out to the designers to see areas you can fine tune.
That's an interesting one. That seems to be what a lot of teams do. But I can tell you that that in itself has a very big loophole that you know we would discuss just now. But yes, that's that. I mean, like I said, no answer is wrong. It's just based on your understanding and experience. So, any more ideas? Anybody else? Hi, Ibibo Kubara.
Oh, yeah. Good evening, everyone. So
Yeah.
when do you bring your designer into the conversation? For me, right, it's at the very it's at the very beginning when you're even ideating. At the
Mm,
very beginning, from the onset of
yeah.
whatever you're working on. Your designer has to
Yes.
be involved. Yeah.
Okay. Love it. Love it. Thank you,
I-
Kubara.
And I guess I was just trying to say that a lot of people sort of confuse the UX and the XD part. So it might be good to provide clarity when we say product design, because okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I would do that. I would do justice to that. I think Joy, your hand is raised. Hi, Joy.
Okay, hi. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I just joined, but I've seen the question. So,
Mhm.
for me, where I work for a startup. So when I get the problem, I just take it to the entire team. We are what, 8, so we all work on it together. So designers, designers, developers, everyone. So we work on the, how do I put it? Yeah, we start together.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Joy. Love it. Jerome.
Um, Hi, obvious. Hello, everyone. I mean, Elias, sorry.
Hi.
So for me, right, once I get to put up the product concept note or paper together and management has signed off on that, I then gather the entire team, share it with the team, and they get to workshop that with the team and both
Mm,
engineering and design, and we all get
mm,
so that everyone buys into the entire vision of what it is we're supposed to get on.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. All of this actually work for as in different approaches for different teams. Um, and I think it's really important for me to mention that, and I'll start with this statement. These the points where you bring in your designer, all right, will significantly affect how much clarity we're able to conjure, all right, through the entire development or product development process. If you bring them in when you have already put a lot of ideas together and put some thoughts and put everything on paper or on your sheets or your documents, and then okay, this is what we're working with, all right. um I mean, it could work for your team, but there's a whole lot that you will be missing out from something that Ihama mentioned earlier on, and that is like framing the problem. All right. Sometimes we receive requirements or requests from maybe management or leadership that this is what we want to get done. All right. And then we don't necessarily ask a lot of deeper questions to the why behind it, and really dig deep into that particular problem. And I think that the way you look at the problem will define how you treat or solve that problem. All right. So the best way to approach this is, at what point do you begin to look at the problem? That is when you should bring in your designer. All right. So you don't want to, and the reason for that is because, again, the way we define the designer role, and thanks to Hema for bringing this up, the way we define the designer role kind of influences what we think they should do, and what when we bring them into the conversation. Usually, people think that design is just basically about like was mentioned earlier on, the painters or the people who are literally just going to take this idea and make form something out of it. Now, I think we call it pixel bending. All right, that's just basically a very weird name for the designer. But yes, that definition usually influences how, when you bring the designer in, or what you think the designer is going to deliver to you. All right, but I have to point out that the role of a designer is not just visual. In fact, I can say that that is just like about 30 or 20% of the job of the designer. All right. There is a whole lot of juice, for lack of a better word, that you get from the design process that could help frame problems properly. All right. I'll give a couple of tips before we wrap up so that you can have some of these things that you can post to your designer and get a lot more out of them. But you want to be able to bring in the person who is able to shed more light on the problem early on in your process. All right. Even when you do not know what problem you're about to solve, you understand the company or the product vision. All right. There's a product vision. There is what we want to achieve as a product. All right. Or in broader terms as the features vision. All right. And that is the point you bring in your design. This is exactly what we want to achieve. How do we go about it? All right. What questions should we ask? And the great thing is that designers are equipped with the ability to, good designers, by the way, are equipped with the ability to ask the right questions. I think part of what differentiates the designer, a regular designer, from a very successful designer is asking the right questions at the right time. All right. And so those questions that help us uncover those things that we do not necessarily know about the problem space. All right. And even the users or the people who this problem is affecting. All right. Those are the things that the designers help to uncover. So I would say, like, one of the first things that we need to do, or to ensure we always do, is to, one, bring in your designer early. In fact, it's the moment you have a document or a PRD and you have not yet brought in your designer, I feel like that is already too late. All right. So this significantly influences how much clarity we get on the work that we're doing. All right. Let's quickly move on for the sake of time. Let's move on to the timeline problem. All right. And this part is a very, very interesting part because a lot of times there's a whole lot going on in the product development cycle. All right. And our goal is to be able to, the honest truth is that users are not waiting for us. Everybody's building something. So if you're not out there fast, or if you're not out there immediately or as quickly as possible, you might miss out on stuff. But I feel like that creates, I mean, not to say that we should not be aware of that, but sometimes that creates what we call false speed. All right. We trying to get stuff out quickly without really looking deeper into what we're trying to do, without really considering like the real meat of the matter. All right. So what is speed without clarity? What is building fast without really understand, without being clear about your entire system? All right. And the honest truth is that designers also have a role to play here in timeline. And by the way, I've been in situations where one of the reasons why stuff we probably don't deliver fast is because the designer is taking their time to deliver. All right, or that someone is delaying, or development is taking time or something. All right, but we can always, obviously, some of those things are dependent on the skill of the individual or the people developing that. All right, but then there is also a part of time that has to do with depth. All right, and thoroughness. All right, I always tell my designers, the moment any stone you leave unturned, all right, will become a boulder in front. Meaning that anything you don't deal with now, by the time you get to production or by the time you finally deliver that solution, all right, it's going to bite you back. So what's the point of doing all of this without really being thorough? All right. And if you notice, much of the thoroughness helps reduce all those back and forths, all right, and ensure that there's enough understanding or we reduce the amount of uncertainty and or lack of clarity in the entire system. All right. And then there's also the part of prioritization. All right. There's usually, when we are thorough with our flow, when we have come up with the entire flow, for example, it's now possible for us to be like, okay, this particular aspect of the entire flow, we can trade this off, or this might not necessarily have a lot of impact on the experience. How can we like maybe reduce the scope, all right, of this, or how can we begin to strip down any unnecessary part of the whole thing, so that we ensure that everything that we're building is what we can work with now. All right. So, like I always tell designers, early prototyping reduces rework. All right. As much as possible, trying to have all of those things early enough, all right, and fast enough from the design end reduces the time spent in reworking all of these things. Okay. I'll just quickly switch to the alignment problem. And this is where there's also a problem with cross-functional teams. All right. And as the PM, being the central, very central person in the entire product or entire delivery process, all right, you find yourself absorbing a lot of all of this context and heat. This person or this team are requesting this particular idea or feature for something. This other team are not necessarily wanting to go further or go beyond what they have been given. It's just a very weird mix of different things or different expectations. And then as the PM, you sit in the middle trying to juggle all of these things. All right. But the honest truth is that all of these misalignments, all of these different perspectives as a result of the fact that people cannot necessarily see what we're trying to do. And I can say that the designer is the one that, for the lack of a better word, paints the picture better. All right. Design, what design does is to externalize thinking. So we can see, we know the problem we're trying to solve. Right. What design does is to bring that out and make it a bit more tangible. All right. And it is that tangibility and visual effect or visual aspect of it that kind of puts everybody on the same page. All right. So when the entire flow is now visual and everybody can see that, okay, this is exactly what we want to get done. All right. Then the question is no longer interpretation. We all can see that this is the problem we're trying to solve. So how do we proceed from here? All right. Some tips or some ways that design helps here is like when we conduct design-led demos. I usually tell my designers, all right, to obviously for every feature that they work, they are the ones that handle the demos. All right. You are literally sharing with the entire team what you have designed. And don't just bring in the product stakeholders like product design, product managers, and product engineers. Bring in the other people who are connected to this particular feature that we're trying to build, and speak to the problems that they have for this particular feature. Speak to their own connection to this particular feature in your demo. So we usually have what we call design-led demos. I'm sure a lot of teams do that. All right. And again, just repeating the whole thing about thoroughness in the prototyping to reduce those interpretation gaps. Right. There's also something that you probably might want to there's also something you want to probably explore. I don't know how many teams do this, but we have something called design documentation. And we've learned that most of the projects that we work through that have this particular aspect of it in the design team are usually we kind of get the best result out of them. All right, I'll show you a bit of an example of or a template of that design documentation before we wrap up. All right, but this kind of helps the designer to take on the role of a product manager, just like the way the product manager has a PRD, all right, or the product team in general has the PRD. The designer has what I call the design documentation, which spells out the problems. The problem exactly is like when I write my design documentations, it's like I'm speaking to somebody who I'm trying to onboard into the product, or who I'm trying to I'm speaking to like an investor or a stakeholder, something like that, all right? And I spell out the problem properly. Literally, me being able to spell it out shows that I understand the problem, all right? Then the solution, obviously, what we're thinking about, how to solve it, all right? With all the links to all my explorations, the wireframes, and even the charts, and even from conversations with the users, conversations with potential users, all of those things get into the design documentation. All right. There's also an aspect that is very interesting and important, and I call that the success metrics. So as the designer, it's important for you to ask yourself, how will we know that what we is actually going to solve this problem that we have said it's going to solve. What do we need to capture? What data do we need to capture? And that changes the game for the designer, because now you're no longer thinking about UI and visuals and all of those things. You're thinking about, did we actually solve this problem? Did everything we put together, did it actually address the concerns from the different stakeholders in this conversation? All right, from the users, from the to the salespeople, and whoever is invested in that particular feature. All right, like, what do we need to capture? And this is a very important aspect of the entire documentation, because it kind of positions the designer in a very unique way to look at that particular problem and the fit solution, right? So there are other things in that documentation that kind of help with that. But I've seen that when designers write and go this level to spell out specs and think of their solutions that way, all right, it does a whole lot for the product team. And in fact, most of the product managers I've worked with, and usually whenever I deliver that document to them, it even helps even fine-tune the PRD at some point, because we see that a lot of things that we've not considered that we not consider earlier on, all right, we've been able to spell them out and then use that to solve the problem that we're trying to solve. Lastly, we'll be looking at the risk problem, the entire journey of the the entire development journey, product development. And when I say product development, I don't mean engineering only. I mean from the moment we identify a product to the moment even after we've delivered it to the users. It's all about risk, right? I don't need to mention the different types of risk. There's value risk, usability, feasibility, and viability risk, all right? But all of these risks are pointing to particular questions. Value risk is basically, are users really, really going to use this thing, all right? Or does it really solve the problem for the user? Are we just building this because of what we think the user needs, or is it because of what they actually, the problem they're actually looking to solve? All right, feasibility speaks a little bit inwardly, like, can we actually do this? Is this something that we're equipped to do this? And all of those different risks, they have different questions that they ask. And you can, like a design, having your design team think about risk is a very, very interesting position to be in, because they're asking the right questions. They're asking questions that help us to ensure that this particular solution is sustainable. All right. And let me just speak a little bit more to this risk part. A part of it that not many things have not fully developed, and I'll call that, and that's the testing part of things. All right. So testing is a bit challenging, all right, for a number of reasons, but I think that the best teams out there are teams that have learned how to learn from whatever they are building. It's not really about, I think the way to put it is that it's not really about launching fast, but it's about learning fast. Like how quickly are you able to put stuff out there and test it and be sure and validate your assumptions. All right. So you want to be able to do that early. Now, many teams just go ahead to design, and many design teams go ahead once they've gotten there's go ahead to proceed with the design phase of the entire thing. They go ahead, do the designs, come up with the UIs, hand over to engineering. Everybody looks at it. They do their demo probably. Everybody looks at it and says, "Oh, this is fine." All right, and then we go ahead to build. But there's a missing piece there that most teams, and it's important for us as PMs or for PMs to prod their designers to do this aspect of work, which is testing your design. All right, there's a whole lot that you could get from testing your design before you begin to commit. All right, and you will find out that anything you missed in testing is actually costly in the end. All right, so it's easy to manage risk when it's visible. So it's better you do it when it's cheaper. You do testing, for example, when it's cheaper, all right, so that you can mitigate any kind of risk that will come as you're building. All right, so basically user testing reduces usability and value risk. And I think that as product teams, we should encourage low-cost experimentation. And that's what I was just saying earlier, which is testing on the design level. All right, there's testing on the product level, but at that point in time, you're not asking the kind of test you're trying to run, or the kind of questions you're trying to answer are not questions that will break the system if you get the responses you are not hoping to get. All right, so you want to be able to mitigate a lot of risk at that building phase, especially on the design end, and have your designers test properly. All right. So these are like my summary of these problems. All right. Well, one thing I would also like to put out there is that it's actually a clarity infrastructure. So just as an aside, right, in my team, when I do performance management, one of the things that we test or we measure our designers on is context breakdown. All right. And what context breakdown is how involved are you as a designer in providing clarity to your team? All right. How much engagement do you, how much clarity do you bring to your team, basically? And I feel like that's the entire job of the designer. All right, providing clarity at different stages in the product development process to the team, to the entire workflow. All right, even in the engineering phase, there's a lot of, I mean, the collaboration between the designer and the engineer is a very important one, but probably go too much towards that direction. All right, but yes, we have to put this mentality in the heads of our designers and in the heads of every team, that design is actually a clarity infrastructure. Everything that the designer is supposed to do is supposed to provide clarity to the entire process. All right. And the thing is, from a designer's point of view, design thinking is not just like a process to empathize the whole thing that everybody recites, ideate, prototype, test, and all of those things. No, it's not really the process. All right, it's about making decisions, making better decisions at every stage of the product process. All right, so it's important that we push for our designers to fit in design thinking into the entire workflow, all right, as much as we can. Being able to be close to the users, being able to ask the right questions, to frame problems correctly, all right, and even joining the whole prioritization conversation, the strategy conversation of like, okay, we have all of these things we want to build, all right. What should we build first? What should we put out first? What is the most important thing to put? Your designers have to be involved in those conversations. All right. And I started with the statement that the PM is like at the center of the product, plays a central role in the product culture, in ensuring that there's a good product culture. All right. So even though from my end, for example, as a design stakeholder, I push for my designers to do such things, it's important that we also encourage our designers on our different teams as the PM to do these things. All right, and ensure that they are providing as much clarity as is needed. Okay, so I have a couple of tips that I would like to share, and this could even throw more light to some of the things that we've mentioned. So basically, what things can we do to build or to influence that PM design relationship and make it very effective? All right. So I'll just be running through them, and then we can begin to have a lot more conversations about them. So the first thing, the mindset. All right, it starts with how we look at design, how PMs look at design, and how designers look at design. All right, how designers also look at the product management work. And I would like to coin it or put it in this way, that we need to treat design as intelligence, not execution. What that means is that it's not really about getting design done, all right, but answering questions that we have. All right. The designer's job is to provide answers to questions using the skills of that the designer has, all right, to bring those questions, answer them. All right. And at the discovery phase, the sad truth is that many PMs are the major stakeholders or the most involved people in the discovery phase. But I think that the designer has to be equally responsible for that discovery part. All right. So if you do discovery alone, then you're literally losing out of a whole lot of clarity that could come with introducing the designer early. So without proper design thinking, obviously PRDs will look like, oh, this is already decided, so we're not going beyond this. All right. I actually tell my designers most times to, whenever we already know that, okay, we need to work on this feature, I tell them to start exploring, start asking the questions, push for, don't wait for the PRD just yet, all right? The PRD is a growing document, and we're going to see it in the next tip. Don't wait for the PRD just yet. Begin to explore, begin to ask questions, begin to dig deep into those problems. And then you find out that in the process of doing so, you are intersecting with the mindset of the PM, all right, and answering the right questions then. So this is a very important point. I hope we're able to push it to our teams to treat design as intelligence and not as execution. All right. So this is the part I was talking about with the PRD. So the PRD is a living artifact. It's a growing document. All right. And I think that sometimes because of the way our teams in the way a lot of teams are set up, all right, there's a legacy approach that one of the first things that we need to do is to come up with a PRD before we begin to do any work or do anything. All right. But I feel like that already stifles a lot of creativity and a lot of ideas or solutions that could have been explored, all right, in the process. So your PRD is actually a living artifact, and your PRD is co-authored. It's not, I don't know if this is controversial, but it's not a product management document, all right? It's actually a co-authored document for the product team, all right? Everyone, the engineer, the designer, and the product manager are expected to contribute to the robustness, in quotes, for lack of a better word, of that document. All right. So it's not a solo narrative. You should not. And the good thing is that the moment you bring your designers early in the conversation, all right, automatically they get involved. They begin to provide all of this clarity. All right. And the sad truth is that many PMs think that, oh, if you take this one away from me, then what is my job? All right. I obviously don't want to be a scrum master. I don't want to be doing all of those project management kind of things. All right. So what exactly is my job? But at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is to discover problems and find solutions to those problems. All right. So mature teams and mature organizations don't necessarily ask their designers or engineers to respond, to go ahead with what has been in PRD. Right? Instead, they actually co-author it with clarity, asking those questions. On a very personal level, what we do in my team, for example, is like, I think it was Jerome that mentioned it. I don't know if it was Jerome. Like, we have what we call the one pager, all right? The one pager is a document that just tells us everything we know right now, all right? It doesn't tell it doesn't tell details of a lot of things. It's just, what do we know about this thing right now? All right. And that one pager is what I think that the product manager can at least just have in case you want to, for alignment and for sharing of the context that you already have on that particular problem. Right. But it is from that document that I tell my designers, okay, so there's a one pager that has been provided for this that has everything we know about this particular endeavor. All right. Go ahead, begin to explore. Go ahead to ask questions. Go ahead to begin to sketch a couple of things. All right, just provide more clarity, because at the end of the day, we want to come up with the right answers to the questions that we have in that document. All right, and if we find out that they eventually influence how the PRD is developed. All right, so it is a co-authored document. It does not belong to the PM. I hope I don't get thrown out for that. And then I think I mentioned this before. All right, the discovery phase is actually PM, design and engineering, asking the right questions. But there's a caveat: asking the right questions early. All right. Again, maybe I'm overemphasizing it, but I don't think it can ever be overemphasized. Like the point where you bring in these other stakeholders in the conversation will determine how much context you have to move fast. All right. So obviously you want to be correct early enough. You want to ensure that you're moving in the right direction early enough. So for you to do that, you need the kind of context that the designer will provide or that the engineer will provide in terms of feasibility and whether we have what it takes to actually build this out. All right. So I think that it is important that we highlight to our teams that these parts of this discovery, in fact, the entire journey is collaborative, but you see this discovery part, it is not a one-sided affair. It is everybody putting their heads together to ensure it's done. All right. And then the final tip here I have is the experimentation part. All right. I think, and I'll say this again, I think we need to encourage our designers to experiment and experiment smartly. Obviously, not to waste time. All right. There are ways to do lean experiments. All right. But you do not want to miss out on finding out if certain things will work. All right. Sadly, and I mean, we have an audience of different people across the world right now, but for example, Nigeria or in Africa, which is maybe a bit blown, but I do know that from the teams that I've worked with in a lot of or adjacently worked with, experimentation is not very welcome. It feels like time wasting. All right, and that's the part of our process that we really do need to debunk or break down. Like, we need to encourage it from a product strategy point of view, encourage experimentation from a product strategy point of view, but in the individual teams, all right, especially on the design end, because of at that point in time, you already have artifacts of what you can show to your users. All right, it's important to encourage experimentation. Hi.
Hi, Elias. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt the session, but I guess I'm interrupting already. We have
Yes.
like 5 minutes left, and I'm pretty sure
yes.
you have questions to ask you. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that note. I'm wrapping up. I think this is actually the last idea, but just for the sake of like, it is just to throw more light on the whole experimentation and validating before committing. All right, is like saying that you want to maybe you're trying to jump out the plane or you're trying to do something very wild, and you don't have time to check the parachutes. That's how it feels like when you don't experiment, with your work. All right. So the good thing is that in the entire product team, all right, the first place that you can actually introduce experimentation is in the design phase. And as product people, it's important that we encourage that a whole lot. All right. Not to overflog the matter, testing really does not slow you down. You actually move the learning to a point where it is earlier and it's cheaper. All right, so that you can actually iterate or change direction as fast as you need to. All right, so and it's really not about launching; it's about validating or validated learning. That's that
Thank you
about
so
that.
much. That has been very, very comprehensive. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people tomorrow would go to their offices and I don't want to say beat up their designer, but I'm pretty sure you
Please
started
do not come back to me. It's not me.
Because I think that the culture that a lot of people have also implied is just hand over the PRV to your designer and get it done. Oh, what's even worse is that in some cases, some people do the user flow as the PM for the designer and then expect the designer to stick to that user flow. I mean, you can see you all laughing already. So
Yes.
I've seen reactions or behaviors like that. To round it all up, I would like to ask if we have any questions. I know that we have just 3 minutes left. So if you have any questions, you can raise up your hand. If the question is also on how you can convince your designer to be more involved in the strategy side of things, I mean, you can go ahead and ask, because that was going to be my question. My own question is, how do you get designers that are used to the painter lifestyle to be more involved in, the strategy side of things, owning user research, and also making sure that after the design is done, they didn't just go on to the next one, and making sure they come to become involved in the metrics of what they've done. How do you get them to be more involved like that? Because I mean, some people just want to be painters for the rest of their life. So
Yeah. And funny enough, some teams just hire painters for the sake of being painters, sadly.
Yeah.
All right. But yes, I think what I'll just say to that is it kind of starts at the top with the mindset. So I've said a lot of things that we can do from a PM point of view, but at the end of the day, it's the designer that has to take up that mindset. All right. Sadly, many designers don't know. All right. And that's because of the way we've interpreted what design needs to be. All right. So that the way to change that is to either start from the top, like from a strategic standpoint, what do we need a designer to do? All right. And if that is spelled out, I feel like they can.
Oh, you just muted yourself.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think over time there will be that conformity, all right. But it usually starts at the strategic level of defining what exactly do we expect the designer to do, all right, and sharing that with the design team. From my end, I always have the PM. So when PM speak to me about such problems, all right, I relay them to who is the person leading that designer, all right. How did they define the designer's role, and then how can they redefine it to ensure that it does the right thing?
Awesome. Thank you very much. We have 2 questions, and I think those will be the only 2 questions we'll be able to take. So Fubara,
Right.
you can go ahead, and then we'll take him. And we'll
thank you. So for me, right, not like I really have a question, but just to add to what Elias said about aligning the top on the need for experimentational designers, if I put it that way, right? So if you're able to sell the values to your stakeholders, that having a designer that goes through this whole process with us end to end saves us money at the end of the day, because if during the stage of experimentation we get to have that first field of the users, or that holistic user feel, and we are saying, okay, this will not fly, or this will fly, it saves us that money or that time or that value that we'll lose if we just get painters to paint and we move on to the market, right? So I believe if you sell that value to your stakeholders, definitely they will want to save money, right? Definitely they will want to test the water before they jump in, and they'll buy it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Uncle Chap, please, can you go ahead? We're already at 8:01. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Elias, for this. Honestly, when you were talking about carrying designers along, I was saying that this video really needs to be shared across the world so that everyone sees. Designers really need to be in the company, honestly. So what I actually wanted to add to that is that really boils down to it's going to be a lot of work for PMs, because me, honestly, I'm looking for a designer to even need a PRD for myself. So I think communicating adequately from the product part is really very necessary, so that designers understand that their job is just
I don't know if it's people is breaking.
Yeah, I can't
it's
quite make
breaking.
out everything you're saying.
We can't say it clearly at all.
Oh, is it still breaking?
Yeah, no, it's clear now. But what you want to say, question or an addition?
Yeah, just an addition to what he's saying.
Oh, okay. Can you like
Yeah.
summarize it?
Yeah, basically what I'm saying is, as PMs, I think we should be a lot more open to encouraging designers to contribute more just beyond the design, to be part of the critical thinking process, the part of PLD production, because it is really very necessary. I've had a situation where I did something that would actually cause a lot of problem. Then it was spotted out by the designer, and we were able to go through it and solve the problem. So carrying designers along from the concept is really very necessary and important. And team management from the part of the PM should really be very much encouraged. That is when designers understand that their work is way beyond just doing designing, but then being part of the critical thinking for the product.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngocha. I don't know if what Jerome has is an addition or question, because we're only going to be able to take question. Only one more question. Jerome, is it a question or an addition?
No, it's a question, Sam.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so thanks, Elias, for the section. You mentioned something about testing prototypes, right? I just
Yes.
want to understand, testing prototypes, do you mean building with local tools, then testing, or building the screens on Figma and just, using the prototype functionality?
Very brilliant question. And to answer that very, very quickly, it's not so either one works, all right. However, I will not push for, I will not necessarily, I don't think it's absolutely necessary to build it out. There's some tests that you need to build out and ensure that it looks like, or maybe interactions and a couple of all of those things. But you can do that with very low cost tools like Figma. Or I mean, when I say low cost, I mean you don't really need to go and build an entire thing to test like that. But I mean, with the advent of AI, it's easier to do such. But there is the thing about testing is not necessarily, first of all, most people look at tests the wrong way. All right. I think it's about asking questions, or what exactly are we trying to validate? And I feel like that would define what your test parameters should be. All right. If it's something that you can use a wireframe, for example, there are sometimes you can actually use wireframes to test, but it's very limited. All right. But if you have your prototype, maybe on Figma, for example, there are many tools that you can plug into to use it to test. All right. You can even put it in front of a couple of other people to just like see how they respond to it and ask questions. So many tools kind of help with that level of testing. But it always will depend on what question you're trying to answer at that testing phase.
Thank you very much, Elias. I think that with the advent of AI tools these days, it even makes it very, very much easier to, if you have a painter on hand, right? It's Figma makes that sort of do your prototyping for you, and just you're able to get your user testing as fast as possible with useberry. Yeah. Thank you very much, Elias. I can see that what you talked about today really, really relates to a lot of people. You know that at the beginning we were thinking, oh, are we going to be talking about product manager problems? Or are we going to be talking about product problems? So I like the fact that you're able to do everything. Thank you so much for staying up to this time. And Elias will be sharing the slides with us so that I can also share it with you later. If you would like to access past recordings, you can always check our YouTube channel. We'll be putting this up on the YouTube channel also. So if you want to listen to this again, you can always check YouTube. Thank you very much, Elias, again. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.